Yeah. Hi. Today we're here with Ben Konick, and Ben, you're not related to Harry Konick, are you?
No, I get that a lot. I do get that a lot.
Actually, I worked for a builder years ago, Shaw Builders down in Connecticut, and Shaw Builders actually built Harry Konick Jr.'s house in New Canaan. It was he had these old barns, and they just took it down to nothing, and it was pretty cool. So I actually got to meet him. He's a really nice guy. He had brought up all this material from New Orleans to like the special wood that he liked. He actually drove down there and picked it up in a trailer and brought it on back. So that was kind of funny. But anyway, we're here talking with Ben today, and just really curious about his experience with sim racing, and we'll talk about his rig, his experience here at VR Motion Labs using the simulator. So how'd you get into this crazy sport, Ben?
Let's see. The first time probably was that I did any sim racing was Gran Turismo 2, which would be like 97, 98, late 90s. I forget. It was on the PS1. And I've had every Gran Turismo game since then. I started iRacing maybe about 3 years ago, after I finally got a wheel, and then wanted something a little bit more realistic because I had just been using a controller. Yeah. It was not the same. So that's kind of the short story of sim racing. I do a little bit of go-karting as well, and a couple track days, but nothing too crazy. Trying to get into that.
Yeah, so. Got it. Yeah, it's kind of similar to me. I started out with this game called Wipeout on Sony PlayStation that I couldn't use any of the racing games at all because they didn't feel real. I didn't like using a PlayStation controller to try to control a car. It just didn't work for me at all. So, but I could figure this game out called Wipeout, and there's another one called Moto Racer. Those are the two sort of racing games that I really liked. It was this anti-gravity racing thing. It was pretty cool. I really enjoyed it. Good audio in that one too. So anyway, why don't you tell us just a little bit about like what you have at home right now, and then we'll talk about your experience in this simulator.
Sure. Yeah, I've actually played that Wipeout game as well. It's awesome. Yeah, it's a classic. So my sim rig at home is pretty poor, man. It's just a Logitech G27, and I strap it to my desk, and the pedals kind of sit in the back, so they're not quite deep enough, and just an office chair. So
the Logitech pedals as well?
Yeah, just everything that comes with it. Yeah. I had bought it secondhand from somebody I knew, so haven't spent a ton of money on it, but it gets the job done for the most part.
Yeah. Sure. So I'm curious, like, how did you hear about VR Motion Labs? Was it through the Boston VR Sim Racing group that I've got?
So I think the first time that I heard of it was when you came up to HMS Motorsport in Danvers maybe 2 years ago or something like that. Yeah. And I came out to that because I was living in Danvers at the time. And I think that was just this static rig over here. And I was hooked. So then I saw the meetup group and joined that and been coming to the open houses.
Okay, great. Yeah, we have like these open houses, like we try to do them every quarter. So if you have any interest in sim racing, you want to see what this is all about, that's a good opportunity to get here. You'll meet other guys that are really into it, and you'll get a chance to try the either the static simulator or the 3 degree of freedom motion simulator that Ben just got out of, actually. So last night was my first race with the PCA Sim Racing. They've got a really amazing series going on right now, and it's great to see it. It's helping to bring young people, I think, into the organization. I think this is really, really going to be important for all the manufacturers to get behind sim racing because the young people really can't afford these cars, and it's very, very expensive, as we all know, to race cars. We'd all love to do it, but you've got to have the time, and you've got to have a boatload of money to pull it off. So sim racing does fill this magic void that lets us do that. So anyway, I was at last night. I was racing at Mosport in the Porsche, the GT3 Cup car, and you know, I mean, I've been practicing a lot. I've been doing this a long time, but, you know, these guys are running 119s and I'm running 122s and scratching my head going, how the heck are these guys this fast? And obviously they know this car a lot better than I do. And so I asked Ben to do some laps in it. And Ben, what was your impression?
So that was my first time ever driving Mosport, and obviously the first time with that car on that track. It's a cool track. It was a little tricky to learn some of the corners, downhill corners, but awesome track. And my lap times ended up being pretty close to yours.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm not sure where they're finding 3 seconds. It's got to be more track knowledge and car knowledge at this point, because I spent about 45 minutes, 50 minutes,
Right.
and couldn't find much more time than that. So
Yeah. You know, one of the things that I think is amazing about sim racing is, number one, the way the Porsche guys have done it, the PCA's done it, is it's very, very organized, which is really cool. The races are 1 hour long. Now, that's a long time to be, you know, running at race pace, certainly for a guy my age. And I mean, I left last night. I finished up around, I think it was around 10:30, and I was devastated. And I was meeting Ben here at 10 this morning. I was like, oh man, I hope I can make it. But I did. Anyway, Ben, just to wrap things up here, what I wanted to do is ask you to compare, you know, the experience you have here in this simulator to your simulator at home.
yeah, so right off the bat, the big difference is going to be VR. Being able to look into the corners and just having the peripheral vision and everything definitely makes a huge difference. But then taking it up to the next level is the 3 degrees of freedom. I mean, when you can feel the car actually step out, you can correct it before you even think about correcting it with your eyes, because if you're seeing it, it's too late. The car's already rotating too much. So if you're pushing it hard, you're either going to lose it, or you're not even going to be able to push as hard as you can in this rig. So
Yeah.
that's probably the.
And what do you think of the direct drive wheel?
Oh, the direct drive wheel is fantastic. Yeah,
This is
I mean,
the Fanatic wheel.
Yeah.
It's fairly new.
yeah, it's good. It's got a lot of pressure in the steering, which is nice. But it's not too hard to drive either. It's I think it's accurate. I mean, I haven't driven a Cup car in real life, but I've driven enough different types of cars that it feels the most like driving a car that I've done with a sim wheel. So
Great. Yeah. All right. Well, again, thanks for tuning in here, and thank you, Ben, for showing up here and just giving us some feedback on the simulator. I hope you had fun.
oh yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me.